All right, so thank you all, everyone, very much for coming to yet another of our incredible sessions with Memory Keeper and this webinar series where we talk about how to connect human beings in your community and also drive economic growth and development through storytelling. We've had an incredible number of sessions so far. I'll just quick share some of the faces that we've had so far and who's yet to come. So we've had Andrew, the Sasquander, we've had Doug Griffith, Chris Fields, both experts in community strategic development, John Padgett, who was an incredible filmmaker that we had join us, Annie Charles from Indigenous Destination Saskatchewan, talking about how to bring in the Indigenous story and respect it. And Jason Cameron from the Smart Cities Calgary. Today we have Kelsey Love, very excited to have her here. And then our next session is Seth Godin on November 7th. So we'll talk about that a little bit more to come. So I'm really excited to kick off today. Kelsey is just one of my favorite people to talk to, period. So I've brought her up a couple times in these sessions because the word placemaker has come up a number of times throughout, but placemaking, but have we really dug into what the heck it is? So it keeps coming up. I'm sure we've all Googled it. We've done a little bit of work, but have we really dove into what placemaking is and how can it drive our community wellness, connection, and our economic development. So today we're going to talk with Kelsey about what is placemaking, why it matters. We're going to talk about the history of it a little bit, and I've got some background on this third place concept that we'll share. And then we're going to talk about how you provide this experience tangible or intangible placemaking and how those two can come together really beautifully when it comes to storytelling in your community. And we're going to share a little bit on how Memory Keeper can help. And then we've got some examples and inspiration. And I want to just give a shout out to Martin, who's joining us from Dauphin, Manitoba. We have some great examples from there. And so we extended the invitation for him to come as well. And I suspect his willingness to share their stories and show up also means that he may have some willingness to answer some questions if anyone is looking for some inspiration. And we'll also share all this when it's done. So we will share the recording as well as any of the resources that we spoke to today. So you will not leave here without some more wisdom than you came with. And I will also say that, there was almost 50 people on this list, and I did have some that sent their regrets. And for those, we're recording this for you too. So if you have questions after the fact, we've got the recording for you. So let's kick it off. I'm first going to talk just briefly about Memory Keeper. We're a digital storytelling platform. Most of you are here because you are part of the pilot and you're already using us in your communities to tell stories. I want to give a shout out to a couple of the communities that have been doing some really neat stories lately that we've been hearing about. Some are full of festivals and events, but also we're starting to hear some stories about QR code signs going up on art installations or heritage buildings in communities. I know I myself just went to the Moose Jaw Library. That's where I'm based. And our heritage group is doing some work on all the old wartime homes and gathering stories from the community, from folks that are living in these homes or that grew up in these homes. They've got some incredible content already. So a shout out to just all the people who are digging in to the stories and opening them up for a whole community to be a part of. So I start with that. And now I'm going to introduce Kelsey. So Kelsey is self-proclaimed, these are not my words, although I would agree with it. She's the founder of an organization called Kilo Libra. That's going to be our new thing now. And Kilo is, now these are her words, this is why I'm screening this up. I'm like, how exactly do I describe this? Because it's a massive community of forward-thinking people that have come together, thanks to Kelsey, focusing on building code and how to build a better future with the buildings that we place and that we build in communities. And so I would say a recovering engineer and someone who's really passionate about not just creating spaces, creating inclusive spaces and creating an environment that's just conducive to connection. And that's how I would describe you. Those are my words. That's why they were easier to come out with. than calling you a building code nerd, which is what she calls herself. So Kelsey, thank you so much for being here today. Yeah, super jacked to get talking about placemaking with you.
Yay, thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start with the easy one. And it's funny because just this morning, I was scrolling Instagram at like 6 o'clock with my coffee. And this post came up from a girlfriend of mine, and it was saying how when we go to, let's say, Europe or Central South America, what we find is this different feeling than we do maybe when we're visiting more newer lands. And it's this concept of third places. And I think it spoke so well to what placemaking seemed like it was, that there's work, there's home, and then there's third places, and how there's certain cultures that really focus on creating third places, where people can gather and have fun and do all that good stuff. And so for me, that like solidified, oh, that's placemaking at its finest, right? So I just wanted to open up by hearing a little bit about your thoughts about what placemaking is, first of all, and why is it so critically important in our communities?
Okay, so placemaking, I think it's one of those things where, yeah, you can Google it. Every probably official community plan or whatever within every city defines it differently. To me, it's kind of, I guess, within buildings and outside, like urban design, landscape architecture, but more of a focus on the human side of it. So not necessarily the aesthetic that's nice for places to look nice, but really building and creating spaces that people want to be in. And to me, there's a lot of, I'm obsessed with brains and brain science, and there's a lot of psychology behind it in terms of where people like to be and where they want to linger. To me, placemaking is like creating spaces where people want to loiter and just be and spend their time, and their nervous system, like everything about them just feels safe and they want to stay there. Yeah, I don't did that.
And yeah, no, that's a great quick description. And what makes you so passionate about it? Every time I've talked to you about it, you light up a little bit in this.
I do. Yeah.
Want to loiter and want to feel safe. I think that's something that's important, because a lot of communities here have spaces where maybe people are gathering that's not safe or what have you. It's like, how do you balance that?
Why I'm so passionate, I think it's a whole lot of reasons. Like my background is engineering. So I worked with the city of Regina. I started in roadways and then moved to the building department. So I've always been kind of in the built environment infrastructure world. The building code, although it's super geeky, I love being a part of it, especially at the city, because you got to see what's coming, but also at that design stage of buildings is when you really have the opportunity to either create spaces that foster community and interactions or not. And while during my time at the city, back in 100 years ago, when we were working on our official community plan here, Design Regina, I was the one who was, I was in roadways at the time, but volunteering, going to all the booths, community engagement. And yeah, so just really have always just loved it. I've always been someone, whenever I go somewhere new, I just aimlessly wander to spaces that feel good. So it's like I've just been like collecting data my whole life on like this term placemaking, which I didn't know what it was. And then what really instilled it in me was a year and a half ago. For a year, I worked as the executive director of what's called the REM. So it's Regina Eco Museum. It's a new concept for the Civic Museum. The old
Museum
one
without walls.
Yeah, the old one closed like 10 years ago. Anyways, the Eco Museum is essentially a museum without walls. So finding creative ways to bring stories of not only the past, but the present, because the community groups and the stuff that's happening now is future history, but finding creative ways to bring that out into the community so that people don't have to go to a physical location. And to me, essentially what the REM is doing is it's pure placemaking. So I got to spend like a year. And when I started there was no programming at all. So I was like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, let's start a pen pal program and let's build benches. And so it was really, really great.
Can we just pause for a second on that? Because I know some of the things you did there. So just for everyone's background, so Memory Keeper works with Regina Eco Museum. We'll show some examples later where we have QR codes on exhibits that are in the community. A really, really great way to just have someone walking by, but you took it to the next level. And I wonder if you could speak for a second about, like, one of the stories, for example, is about general stores, and they have a small, could you speak to what you did where you didn't just do the exhibit of the general stores, you actually engaged with some seniors' homes and did some storytelling and recording as well, right? So can we talk about that for a second?
Yes, so we did, I'm like single-handedly trying to, like, kid on a mission, bring back letter writing. We can get into that another time, but why it's so important. But yeah, so I developed a pen pal program between seniors centers and schools to exchange stories. So there was opportunity for them just to freely write, but we structured questions around, what was your favorite thing to do in whatever season, or your favorite place in Regina, or I don't even remember them all, but finding a ways to collect those stories, but also show today's students what, things used to look like, but also, yeah, like writing is just a lost art, and it's really the way to bring stories, one of the ways to bring stories to life that we've lost. So
And I know that I know that REM has some of the stories, some of the voices, some of the video or print messaging in some memory keepers, I believe, that they're sharing as well. So it's sharing this history, but it's also getting to accompany it with some voices and old video of people talking about remembering general stores or how important they were to the community and where they gathered and things like that. So I thought that was really great work that you did. I wonder now if you can tell us a little bit more about when you speak to and tangible and intangible storytelling. And I don't know if you want to do this first or if you want to show some examples first and then, because then we can showcase it.
Maybe I'll explain my view of it, and then I really like the REM benches because it's a great
It's cool.
example of bringing it all together.
Yeah.
So yeah, intangible, obviously things you can't touch or feel, intangible being things that you can. So for the Eco Museum and a lot of museums, the tangible side is what was the focus. You go and you look at artifacts and you see things and you ooh and you ah. Whereas the intangible side is the story behind it. So an example would be collecting these stories through letter writing, but also the story behind the artifacts you see. So that's why at the REM we tried to combine the two and what we use Memory Keeper for. So it's artifacts museum, but also things such as, like, you go by a mural and it's really beautiful and cool and you stop for a second and you admire it and you keep on your way. Whereas by combining the intangible, the story behind it, the artist story, their vision, where the idea came into their head, being able to see and hear about, like, the process that they created it. Now you're just adding so much more to the experience. And that's why, the model we use at the museum, and what I think placemaking is too, is combining, marrying the two together is just really amplifies it and just creates more of a human experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, I think of some of the places that I visited, and I think the ones that stand out most, there's a story that accompanies it. There's a voice, there's a reason. I think the other Kelsey, another Kelsey's online, but she's just finished a story in Cornac about the murals and a walking tour for the murals that they have in town. But exactly what she's done is a chapter where here's who the artist was and here's what the history was. And I think that just takes those walking tours to the next level too. We've also the town of Dunmore, Saskatchewan, they uncovered some old voice recordings that they did interviews 15, 20 years ago with citizens, some of which aren't here anymore, and are using Memory Keeper to actually be able to share those voice stories with some of the community. It really just takes a building or a monument or a piece of art to the next level when you get that depth, right?
I
Yeah.
think a lot too, it's like the journey and the destination. Like when you see what you
Yeah.
see is where they got to, but so much of the part. And it's, we live in a world where we don't take much time to slow down. So it's like, I don't know, it's like it's the journey, it's the whole process is what really speaks to our souls and lights us up learning about things. And yeah,
Yeah.
in my
Okay.
opinion.
Yes. Me too. Okay, so what I hope we could do next, I just want to touch on four key pieces that seem to come up again and again when we talked about placemaking. One being livability, sociability, usability, and accessibility. And so for those of you that are representing communities and thinking about, and many of you are in economic development, in tourism, you might not be the people in the city planning group that's actually planning the spaces. So I guess I want to just ask you, Kelsey, and I've asked this of lots of people, when you're working in government space, sometimes people work in silos. And Martin, I may pick on you as well because you've done such a good job and we will showcase some of the things he's done later. But how do you break down those walls? So you, as the person who's driving the experiences you want people to have in your community, also work with all these other groups. Yeah, any tips, I guess, or
Um, I've just always operated in a way that I just talk to people like I already know them. And so, and especially like I worked at like the city of Regina. I don't know how many employees are like 2,000. And typically, and it's really hard working within government when you have these passion projects, the things you want to create, and you rely on other groups. And usually it's like you have to go up your chain and over and down to get permission, which I think I just never did. I didn't listen to that rule. I think when you,
we're here to tell you, break the rules.
yeah,
That's how
break
you
the
make
rules.
good
And it's like,
placemaking.
and I don't know, like how we are now, it's like everything's over email. People just email, like pick up the phone and call people, walk into someone's office. When you have those human relationships, creating things across various silos becomes easy. And Jess mentioned, so Kilo Lima, not
I know,
someone
I
called,
don't know why Libra.
someone called it Kilo Lama the other day and Kilo Libra. So I love it all. But essentially, yeah, it's a network of building code nerds, but it's national. And so I realized that we could do more together by breaking down silos, not just across provinces, but across municipalities. And that's how I did it. I just reach out to people and have conversations with them. And you really find, I think, once you start connecting with people and just talking to them about things, if they have a reason why they care about the project too, it's just regardless of what silo they're in, they'll find ways to make it happen. And I think that's, don't just email, pick up the phone and call people. Yeah,
Great.
is my number one tip.
And Martin, look, I just invite you to be a guest, and now
Hi.
you're one of my guest speakers. But
Hi, hello from Manitoba.
hello.
Yeah.
And
Thanks
we will
for
show you what Martin's done later, but the statues, similar, actually, Musha's done as well, some of the wraps, really telling stories in the community. So,
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. Everybody can hear me good? Yep.
yes.
Yeah. So, other than our four, if I look at the two provinces, Manitoba and Saskatchewan, our four cities, I think everybody out there in the ag dev world is sort of in the same boat as I am, because I'm in a small city too. So our team that we work with is a very small team. So it's a little bit easier for me to wiggle my way in and to build these relationships internally. So when we redid our city plan or our development plan last year, I was part of that right from the beginning. Even from the beginning of getting the RFP ready for selecting the consultant. And we actually end up selecting Urban Systems as a consultant because they had a much more holistic approach to what community should be, as opposed to creating a very technical document that says this building should be here and this building should be here. So it's about livable and viable communities. And I followed the philosophy of community economic development, where the word community comes first. And it is about creating livable, viable, safe, interesting communities.
Yeah.
And so, and the storytelling will come automatically, because there where we do storytelling towards our visitors and towards our residents, we do the same thing internally. This is how I win my arguments. by telling a story. So it's extremely important. Yeah.
My husband might say the same thing for me.
Now, I am a storyteller from nature. Like
Yeah.
that's just who I am. It's part of my personality, but it creates such a compelling argument
Yeah.
if you can still tell the story behind it. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And so I'm thinking, and Martin, I'll let you go for a while, but I'm going to bring you back up again. So I'm going to put you on the spotlight again and again. But so who we have online, we have some cities, we have some towns, we have some villages. Is there some basic start to like think about a green space, think about a park, think about an Instagram painted wall on the side of a building? Like, is there any little things that you would say communities that probably don't have a huge budget, how they could get started at looking at placemaking?
From a municipal side, and kind of based on my experience at REM. So REM, obviously it was the Regina Museum, so it was an arm's length from the city. But there is so much, I guess I can't speak to everywhere or smaller centers, but there's so much good work already happening within your municipality. And to me, the role and where we can really make waves pretty quickly with placemaking is as a municipality kind of looking at like the hub and spoke model. And so there's these great things going on. And how can you really amplify the work that's already being done and connect those community groups too? Because what I found, like I come from government and then I was in private sector for a while. And when I moved to the nonprofit sector at REM, I think there's a lot of kind of like scarcity mindset where a lot of these community groups maybe don't collaborate because they're all kind of after government funding too, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And I think that's what municipalities could really leverage is existing work happening, finding ways to connect it. And like you talked about the walking tour with the murals, like there's murals, there's sculptures, there's everywhere. Like a municipality, you have development groups and roadways groups within your city. Like the city can make a map of stuff that's already happening and communicate that out and get it within people's awareness, like the great things that are already happening. And then you can start building momentum and be like, hey, if you want to see more of these, then because the reality is a lot of time, anything coming from a city or what I found in Regina anyways, if the city's proposing something, a lot of times the public's just like, boo city. They have a very like us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to sell people on things because then you have the critics being like, why are my tax dollars being spent on yet another blah, blah, blah. So I think like a quick win is really to leverage what's already existing and promote it because so many people don't know. And that's the model at the REM is that they highlight things already going on. They connect community groups. So part of it is the intangible stories of like they have a blog series, an interview series of community and art groups that are already happening. And they do themes too. So for Mental Health Awareness Month, we interviewed community groups doing things in that realm. Halloween now, I sent you a link, a bunch of them. Tennille, who's still there, she's amazing. She's doing ghost stories. So that's the intangible piece too, is like folklore, city, like that's, unique to your town. And so
and
really
actually calling on the citizens and the groups in
Yes.
the town to tell the stories and contribute.
Yeah.
Not to plug Memory Keeper, but that's a really easy way to use us because you don't have to, you can put it out there and do a call for submissions. But I think when I look at the examples we're going to share shortly, and Candace actually just mentioned in the comments as well, like a lot of communities have that community investment grant program to support activities like this, like actually using those grant dollars to bring other groups together and amplify them is just a really nice way to validate what's already happening in your community. And also your short resources and people are already doing this. So it's really more of connecting the dots and maybe saying, and you can use this space that's city land. That's,
Yeah, I think a lot of too, it's leveraging user generated content. Like you have, like make your lives easier. It's really kind of developing the infrastructure. And yes, it's a memory keeper thing, and that's what they use at the REM, but we leveraged memory keeper as like a central place to bring in all the great stuff other people were doing. But all these different groups, whether they want to or not, they don't have the time to really go outside of their silo and connect the pieces. And so that's where I think municipalities and towns can come in is really make it their job to connect the pieces.
Yeah. And the other thing, I read again and again, you know, digging more into some good examples is, be comfortable. And this has been a theme throughout, and a theme that I think all of us, and especially those who probably work in a municipal environment, struggle with sometimes, is like, if everyone likes you, no one loves you sort of concept. Is it's okay to be a little weird and to step outside of the norm. Like I'm going to show some examples, or we showed some examples, we'll share with you on the lawn, in the lawn on D in Boston. And it was just a green space. They put up these funky swings. They made, you know, some spaces where people could play cornhole. There's picnic tables, and like, it's very simple. But the gatherings that are occurring there, I mean, they've developed now, they have these really cool kaleidoscope lights at night. But it started with, let's put some swings up in this empty space. Let's put some tables here. Let's let some artists showcase their work. It was all things that people in the community, they pulled upon to do. And they've got this really, it looks kind of weird, funky space, but they were brave enough to try something a little bit different too. So I think that's not me maybe asking a question so much as just saying, I think you've said this before as well, is that you have to be willing to be a little weird or different or take a chance in order to really make spaces that will draw people in.
And I think we're at this point, like we, and you reference Europe and other places, like in the Western world, in the industrial era, we really moved towards designing for machines and not life. So we have these big ass roads and this big infrastructure to get cars going everywhere and all the goods to the people. And we kind of forgot about the people. Like we shove people amongst all the infrastructure. And I like to say like garages were the downfall of society. Like people go into their garages and don't talk to their neighbors. And then we have something like COVID and mental health crisis where we don't know our neighbors. And anyways, but we have this opportunity to kind of rebuild Earth, find these weird little spaces and remind people that like, hey, we're not just like industrial robots going through our day. Like this is a huge part of your life and being human, and finding ways that even though we, you know, developed so fast and maybe didn't consider people amongst it or as the forefront, like how we interact, like there's just lots of opportunities. Yeah, you have a big green space, like put some weird swings in it. And I think for the communities that maybe don't have a budget, don't have, maybe face some resistance, it can be as simple as, maybe it's a wall where you're doing a local artist installation. Maybe you're not doing the art installation. Maybe you're going to the school and say, we're going to buy 100 tiles and we want your students to paint this for the art installation. You know, it's the smallest little things, but those are the places where people stop, where they gather, where it's remarkable. It's something worth retelling, right? So I'm just trying to say it's simple. It's not simple, but it can start small, right? And that's one of my notes I wanted to touch on too, is like, let it be simple and iterative. Like we go through these big, and I mean, I worked at a city, I get it, but it's like, let's come up with our 20-year plan. We don't know what the world's going to look like in like 3 freaking years. I love it. It's necessary, but it's also like, don't put so much thought into it. Like you have this weird little park, ask neighbors what they think and just like start and go and try. And you don't know how places are going to be used until they're there. So to put all this money and time and energy and resources to something that you think will work, in my mind, just isn't the best way to do it. It's like, start small, start weird,
see what happens.
See what happens and build from that. And really leveraging like community groups, like community champions. Like they're the ones who, you know, as a municipality, a lot of people have, you know, it's your job and your passion, but it ends at the end of the workday. Whereas you have those community champions who they're like before I worked at the REM, how I got the job at the REM is because I had my map. I was like me, myself, and I doing an alley revitalization project across Regina. I had this map highlight, like just like a lunatic. And then I got connected with the REM and they were like, you know, I think
we need this kind of lunatic to
I was like, I think
started.
actually, But like, you know what I mean? You have people within your towns that are wanting to do this. So find ways to support them and leverage their passion, and they're wanting to make their own town a better place.
Yeah. And I think two things I've seen is, one is, if you don't think they're out there yet, challenge the community, ask, put a challenge out to say, like the alley revitalization, or I've seen some festivals where it's like just the decorate your back, the door, I think it's a door thing where everyone different groups painted different doors in their communities, and put little challenges out and see. And the other thing I was going to say is, I've seen businesses embrace it too. Whether it's creating something on their side wall that will get people there, inside a lot with art. I think art is just a natural connection to the community. But yeah, where there's businesses that are actually showing up and making placemaking in their business or around their business as well. Which I think dovetails nicely into the economic development. Okay, I'm going to dive into sharing some of the examples we found. And I wonder if first we can speak to the Phoenix. Can everyone see my screen now? You see my screen? People? Yeah. Okay, good. So first, I like this placemaking. Kelsey talked about it. We'll talk about it here. But I made the cover a postcard because you love postcards, and also because I do think giving people tangible, intangible, everything together really makes a difference. And it really defined placemaking well, I think. Like, I saw the most remarkable thing, met the most interesting people, and found the most special place here.
Oh, I didn't see that. I love that.
I just made that up. So first, let's talk about the Phoenix Airport as one of the great examples. And I'll just scroll back and forth. This is in a Memory Keeper story.
Yeah.
By the way, of course, we're showcasing it. But yeah, I'll just maybe get you to walk us through
Okay,
what was
cool.
happening there and how it was impactful.
So I first discovered this, I don't know, 2.5 years ago. I was in Phoenix and whatever, I was traveling with my kids. So I had, saw it a bit, but kids and not much. And then I was just back there this August in the museum or the airport. So the airport has their own little Phoenix museum group. And in terms of, cities that are here, airports just have such an opportunity for placemaking and really promoting what's going on in the city. I think they're, for the most part, very underutilized. But yeah, so this time I went, I had no kids, so I just got to like linger and check out the art. So throughout the airport, they have this random art, and they also have, here, if you go down this one here with all the little pictures. So what they did really good here, they had it in places. So this one here was at one of the, I think that's where the terminals, so you have to wait to go to the different terminals, but it's a place where people are spending time. They're kind of in that in-between space where they're not where they're going, they're not where they're from. And so they are lingering. And so bringing these kind of things into places where people are going to be spending more time. So this is beautiful. But the part that they did really great is they have obviously the story. So if you go back, there's some plaques there. So it talks a bit about each of them, kind of where it came from. And then further down, like at the locations too, further down, keep going down, right there at the bottom. So this too, at the locations, it shows you all the other ones that are around the airport.
So they're all art installations of some sort.
Yeah, the other art installations. It'd be great if they had a map. So it's kind of like, instead of, and you're at an airport, you're not going to spend a million hours there, but within a city, this is a great way to be like, because you come across that mural and you're interested, but it's like, hey, where else is there cool shit to go look at? And so having kind of connections to the other places. And then also, I love postcards. I send postcards all the time. So with it, and I brought some, so I took way too many, but you get to take home postcards. So not only are you going there, you get the experience of seeing the art, you learn the story behind it, but you also get to take something away with you to remember it. And that's what I really love, kind of tangible, the memory. When I was a kid and I'd go on trips, I'd save receipts from everything, every pamphlet, and just put together these scrapbooks that were just completely, they're gone now, but that's what Memory Keeper is great for. But I think they just did a really good job what they could do better is tying like memoryKPR into
Yeah,
it.
we're talking to them about put a QR code here and let the
Yeah.
artist tell his story too, or
Yeah.
her story.
Yeah,
And
a lot of
yeah,
them have like some of the artist pictures. None of the ones here I think posted do, but some had like the artist pictures. So even like seeing the freaking human who made it, like
yeah,
ties more into like it's all brain science too. There's science and research behind this, but now you care more because you know that like an
Yeah.
actual human did this and you can see them. And so by being able to scan and then hear this human talking about the art, like it just enhances the whole experience. So I really love what they and like look at this. Like why like it's weird. Like this one blue with all yeah, that's what I'm looking at with all these people. Like why like like whose brain did this come from? Whose brain thought this and why did they think this? Like that's what I want to know about this. So when we talk about like not afraid to be a little weird, that's kind of how you find the people who are super interested. It's your weird like weirdo calling card that you can't be afraid to put out there, and then it draws in the people who are interested.
yeah,
And something like memoryKPR, like having this in a town and having things all over, and then you can have the public contribute the story. So now you're collecting data on who your community weirdos are, who then you can leverage in the future to kind of keep the snowball effect going and create.
Yeah, we did a session on with Andrew Hertz, so the Sasquander,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all about like how do we figure out what our hidden gems are in our community and then tell that story. And
Yeah.
he's like, all you need to do is ask your community, period.
Yeah.
They know. They already know the places where, when their aunt comes to visit, they have to go and show them this or
Yeah.
Okay, so the next conversation and example, and I'll just pin you again, Martin. And so for everyone else's reference, we actually were just planning on speaking to Dauphin because Kelsey had mentioned this is just a great place for community, if they've done some great work in placemaking. And so then I reached out and Martin, am I saying that correctly, but was able to join us.
So I want to tell you the story behind Dauphin too before we go. Okay. So we used to go to Clear Lake every summer, but my family, my dad's side of the family is actually from Dauphin. And I never spent time out there. It was separate from my life. And we were out there and I was like, man, I want to go and check this place out. And whenever I go somewhere new, I'm like, I'm going to get the little tourist map or whatever, because there's such great resources to find these cool hidden gems. So we went there, I went with my kids, I found the map and I was like, oh, there's these weird little statues all over.
They're beautiful.
And yeah, and I love that they have, anyways, we can let them talk, but they not only tie the statue and the history behind it, but they tied it to like courage and optimism and these like kind of invoke feeling that captures the story. And I think that was such a good way they did it too, was kind of, anyways, blah, 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 blah. That's all I have to say about it.
So tell us about this project, if you could.
Yeah. So anyway, you just answered my burning questions. How did you find out about Dauphin and the statues? Great that you're coming to Clear Lake every year because it's an amazing place to be as well. So the statue started in 2014. Actually, our previous and late mayor, Eric Irwin, is really into history and history buff. And he's the one who originally pitched the idea and then championed it. And he could because he was the mayor. And he could sort of push for it, right? This was his passion project. And then it became a collaborative effort. Because when he walked around with some of the ideas about what kind of statues he wanted, and they weren't all done at the same time, they kind of got done over about a 3-year period. We very quickly nudged to him that this needs to be a story as opposed to just statues on their own, because that would be the missed opportunity. So that's what we did, and we very quickly. Because the statues are based on sort of the history of Dauphin, so where how Dauphin started and our agricultural background, and there is some missing components, and there is a juicy detail in there as well. But
Wait, do we get the juicy detail?
I will. Yeah, I will tell you. So maybe you can show the statues for me, Jessica. So
Oh, sorry, I was looking at these on my screen, so pleased that
Yeah.
everyone could see them, now realizing I was not screen sharing.
There you go. So we named him Curiosity, Compassion, Vision, Courage, Perseverance, Optimism Corporation. And then we have an odd little one in there, that's Barry the Bear. Barry was already there, but we just added him because he's super cute and he's
Yeah,
right
he's
next to a
adorable.
playground. And it's often one that people end at especially when they do it with kids, because then there's a splash park in the playground, everything. Now,
I didn't find my way to Bury the Bear.
oh no. Yeah, we have now, you can actually pick up a little map at City Hall. You can just do a little walking tour. They're all in walking distance from each other, be it that Compassion is a little bit further away. So the Compassion one is two nuns. So obviously what you see here is there's what's missing in this storytelling is our indigenous storytelling. I am from Europe myself, and you guys talked about the European storytelling history. I'm from a town that was settled by the Vikings, actually, which that's talking about storytelling. There is so much history. And then often we make a mistake saying, oh, but Dauphin is only 125 years old, but it's not, because we have many other stories to tell that are way older than that. And that got missed in the statues, whether that was just a timeline thing or whether it was just not as much on people's radar. And we have done a lot of work since 2014 when it comes to reconciliation and that kind of stuff. And we can show you an example about that in the next one we did. But compassion is a juicy one, because compassion could be a trigger because of residential schools. So we have had some comments about that. And we have been able to explain it because the nuns, this was actually about caring for older people. And our senior home or personal care home was founded by a group of nuns, and they've actually been there up until about 8 years ago or so. So that's where the statue is. It's at the personal care home. So, but it does deserve attention, and the conversation needs to happen. But when you talk to people about it, they very quickly realize that this is not related to residential schools, but it is a trigger. So trigger warning. And that has to be.
And good to acknowledge it, right? You have to
absolutely
recognize.
So the other statues.
Sorry, can I jump in quick? Just from like background in museums and the new model of museums. And that was kind of the big thing in Regina's museum. And it's all, most municipalities were a very settlers based museum, and now they're finding ways how can we tell the other side of history that hasn't gotten the attention. And so I just really, because personally I did recognize that when we went there.
I did too, actually.
so I really love that you brought it up, because it's not something that it's like, hey, this is where we are, this is most of the history that we've collected is this, and how do we work to make it better. I think a lot of times most of the kids or cities, they're afraid of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, and then they just stall with starting and making those things for it. So anyways, kind of background, just thank you.
And we're learning, and we need to be acknowledging that. And we also, because I'll tell you, when you show the other image, I'll tell you another story about that as well, how we learned along the way. But the bronze statues, they talk about the fight that people have to establish community and all the things you have to do when you work together. We have a very famous pilot called Billy Barker, who is a World War I. He fought the Red Baron and all kind of stuff. So he's nationally recognized and known. So he's there on the courage. We have right behind me, if you can't see it from here. Oh, sorry. If you look out my window, there's a Perseverance statue, which
I think
is really...
Pilot Butte might have the...
I just muted them.
So Perseverance is right outside my window. It's the mother and child bread baking, which has everything to do with the Ukrainian settlement and background. So and my favorite one is Curiosity. It's right across the street from my house. It's at the library where two children are reading books, and I think that's such a neat little statue. It really warms my heart. So yeah, and I fully admit that this started accidental. So this was not pre-thought out. This is just, we had a local champion with a passion for history, and we just glued it together.
Yeah.
But when the opportunity was there, and that's my sort of my tip, is if you see the opportunity, you have a champion, then that's your moment to come in and say, hey, maybe we can make a story out of this. Because
And maybe it
often,
starts with one, or
Yep.
this image on a wall, or,
and it
Um,
is all, usually it starts organically, right? So like you said, you have one mural first, and then you have a
Yeah.
second one, and then you go like, oh, maybe we can do something with this. So
yeah.
Jess,
What's-
will you scroll down in the pictures? Because I think what they really did good, whether this was allowed or not or intended, but if
That's
you
what I was just gonna ask. Are
But, like,
people
this-
allowed to climb on these?
see, this is whether they are or not, that's what makes good art. Look, I fit right in the bread maker.
I was just gonna see if you were in trouble before.
But
yeah,
but
and
this,
you are
if
fully
you want
allowed to do
community
that.
to
Okay,
engage,
good.
yeah, it's like because it's a whole part, it ties in the senses. Like when you can, like, you know, the worst is when you go to a museum with your kids and it's like, don't touch anything. It's like, well, that's how humans remember experiences too, is bringing in those senses.
Yeah,
So yeah, my kids are like hanging all over. They were really
Perfect. Yeah, I love that.
that's
And-
awesome.
And you probably didn't get a chance to make it down to the library where the bench where two children are reading. The bench is actually
Oh,
bigger.
we did
You can
that.
you can sit next to it.
You
So
can
Oh,
snuggle.
that's
Yeah.
great.
I know. I was
Yeah.
like, how many pictures do I put in of my kids? Like,
so but the statues are anywhere between $12,000 and $25,000 a piece, right? It's
Oh, it's
not
quite a commitment. Yeah.
it's not a cheap thing, but they're all bronze and they're all very, very durable.
Mhm.
Yeah. And they're
And-
finished with a anti-graffiti coating as well. So just
Oh, that's relevant.
Yeah.
What else struck me with this example is not just like how beautiful they are and how you have the map and you can walk around, but also when you think of a community and we think about like the goal of this pilot is to drive connection and economic development. And I think about the connection aspect of the culture of a community. When I see these words as the words that represent my community, the culture just feels stronger, better, more, it's just I can resonate with that. Like, yes, the people from my community have perseverance. And so I think it drives a cultural, like just a community culture of feeling proud and a part of something bigger than yourself too. The other one I was just going to show, and we've got some great examples in Moose Jaw actually, where we've got local artists that have done, I'll get some pictures, Craig. I know you're on there. I think Natasha is too. I'll get some pictures when I do the mail out of some of the ones on Main Street that we have too. But these are, again, just a nice way to demonstrate a little art, a little creativity, and also, pay homage to the things that you need to pay homage to.
Yeah, can I do you have time for a quick little story about it?
For sure.
Yeah, because so the utility box wraps, which is all our downtown. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 traffic lights. I think we have 7 or 8 in Dauphin in total. We're a small city, so but 6 of them now have a wrapped box, which really again tells the story of who we are, and we include an Indigenous wrap, and it's right next door to a Indigenous care office as well. So they felt really proud of having that next door. But we had a young non-Indigenous designer design all of these. She's a graphic designer and she's extremely talented. She did a great job. But when we sent the Indigenous design to an Indigenous consultant that we use sometimes, I got a nasty email back because the design was not done in consultation with Indigenous community. So we learned from that. So first of all, I had a small heart attack because I thought I did everything wrong, which was my first instinctive reaction. But then I called him and I talked to him about it. So he explained to me that if you want to do Indigenous art, which this isn't really, but it could be, you need to not only consult with the Indigenous community first, you also need to see if you can find an Indigenous artist first to do that, right? And so these very important things. But then we send it to, we have 12 reserves in our region, and I sent it to one of the chiefs, and he came back to me and he thought it was fantastic. He didn't even ask about who did it or what did it. So it also depends on who you talk to. But we removed one image from it because it was an elder and a child holding hands, which is a trigger again, because it could refer back to the time of residential schools when they came and collected the children from the reserve. So we removed that. So we did consult with them afterwards, and we should have done this right from the beginning, and maybe we should have given an Indigenous person opportunity to chime in when it comes to the design. But we did consult, and we did end up removing one of the images. So yeah.
And I have seen some installations, I will say, and it's great to it, like back to Kelsey's point of iterate, is that you might make mistakes in a number of different ways, or you might not all the community, but keeping going, learning from it. And then, like you said, if we removed some, or I know Moose Jaw's got some Indigenous artists that they're working with on some of the pieces that they're displaying. And I know same with, Prince Albert has some great things happening with, it's, you just iterate, you learn, and you keep going, and with the best interest of your community, I think people understand and are forgiving. We have in Moose Jaw, we have some wraps they've actually local artists have done, and we do some garbage cans as well, where there's cute like Pac-Man around it, or like really different fun, but it gets some of the youth involved and some of the local artists. It's
We need
it's just a
QR
great
codes on all of them.
Well, yes,
to tell
I
a
believe
story.
so.
Because that, to me, that's what I wanted. Like, every time I see something weird like that, I'm like, whose brain did that come from? And like, why? And especially like, I don't know, for our world, like we are moving to such a digital world, and so many things are being automated and whatever, but we'll never, like AI will never be able to take over, is like art and people's stories. And so really, like, I think that's, especially these days, is what really makes people feel alive, is like getting that connection and understand, like, you know what I mean? Like that's bringing the soul back into things.
Yeah. And this is the swings that I was talking about at the lawn on D. Some other examples, just Chicago, there was one certain community, they interviewed over 70 people and then created an art piece on a wall out of it. And people gather there all the time. It's well photographed. That's another thing. Actually, we are working with the city of Moose Jaw, Tourism Moose Jaw, on having postcards with a QR code. So it's like, you can actually scan it and see everyone's pictures of them experiencing this place. I'm not sure if they're out yet or not, but some other examples, some just
a quick note on accessibility, because it just came up too. Accessibility,
yes.
when doing anything, I mean, anything that's coming from a municipality, it needs to be done. Like, I'm a huge my background's the building code. Our building code sucks for accessibility. It's getting a lot better. But having a accessibility consultant or someone to engage that community anytime you're doing anything, because if you're creating these spaces and there's either physical barriers, socioeconomic, any type of barriers to people, you're doing a disservice to yourself. So always get, and whether like you're not big enough to have an accessibility advisory committee, like make sure that's part of the conversation from the get-go. There's my spiel about accessibility.
No, I think it's important. And I think, like, I'm just showcasing some of these other beautiful examples. These stairs, like you didn't have to create a new space for this. You just gave an artist a canvas in your community.
And those are San Francisco. What I really love about those ones, and I couldn't find my old pictures, but so I just Googled those. But in San Francisco, because there is such like the what's the word? Different heights.
Oh yeah, like it is, yeah.
The difference is, I want to say levitation, but that's wrong. The difference in geography. So there's these stairs tucked, and like the really cool thing about this is they're in like hidden residential areas. So it's like they're just like these local secrets. But then when tourists come, they find out about them, are drawn to it. So it also draws people, because from a tourism side, like a lot of people, they look at what's in the downtown, but it really draws people towards seeing the beauty kind of all over the city there too. And okay, these little tile patches in infrastructure, like that's in Saskatoon, the one beside it.
Oh.
I want some town somewhere. Can you guys do this? I see these, I'm obsessed with them. I Google them all the time, but like just you could like supply school kids with random little things. You're not going to fix that hole for a while anyways. And it just like, it gets the community involved.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. That's great. So folks, I will share this story after. I'll just share the link to it so you can see some of the examples. And I also have a video that I was going to show of Memory Keeper, and it has some RAM examples in it as well. It shows one of the displays with one of us scanning the QR code. So I'll share that video after, but I want to just take the last 5 minutes to first see, is there anyone that has any quick questions? They're thinking of a project in their town. They're wondering how to amplify it. We've got Craig is here as well. Hemingway, they won some awards for the storytelling in the city. Martin, we've got Kelsey. Anyone have any questions about the stuff they're doing and want any one-on-one advice? I'd say just take yourself off mute and ask your question if you have one.
Yeah, I don't know if any questions come out. I'm just very inspired now, excited. I'm jotting down notes about, other possibilities in Moose Jaw, both for available spaces we've got to create some more art and build on some of the downtown art that's happened through the Downtown Association and the artists they've hired to do wraps and benches and garbage cans and those things. But so I'm trying to think where are there other spaces we can do that, and then also perhaps just some digital opportunities as we get ready for World Men's Curling is coming here next March. So I'm really thinking about how are we beautifying but also creating these Instagrammable type
The
opportunities.
intangible story part.
So that
too.
when people are here, they're going to be snapping and saying they're in Moose Jaw at this very cool looking place that then will drive more people here ideally. So
Yeah.
Moose Jaw is one of my favorite places to aimlessly wander. And I'm my building, I'm obsessed with old architecture. Anyways, you have so much there. It's finding ways to showcase what.
And Craig's actually Craig, you don't want to talk about this, I know, but I'm going to ask you anyhow. What was the award you won for the Get a Life campaign? It was a national award.
Economic Developers Association of Canada gave us a couple awards for Get a Life. So move to Moose Jaw, you get more house for less money. You get anywhere in 5 to 15 minutes. You get access to the airport 40 minutes away, but you have this great quality of life in Moose Jaw, which all adds up to getting a life. So we kind of took our notorious, Canada's most notorious city, and just tried to use that angle to now, taking another negative phrase, get a life, and turning it into a. So
we should talk. We could probably make some placemaking around Get a Life spots in Moose Jaw. But
yeah,
yes,
count me in.
Awesome.
Anyone else with any final questions?
I guess, I don't have questions, so I don't have my camera on today.
That's okay.
Yeah, just doing our mural walk. I've had it done for a while, but and I have all my signage. I just need the town guys to put it up. So this got me to text the town foreman to see what he actually help me, because so he told me this Thursday. So hopefully we can actually get the signs up.
Oh, that's great.
Where is that?
Cornac.
Yeah.
And I was thinking actually when we were saying the Dauphin, like the resilience, perseverance, I was thinking about your town too, like just the community you have. And
it's kind of hopefully start some more projects just with our 100th coming up in 2026. Hopefully we can get some cool projects that lead into that.
I was just on the phone with someone the other day who was doing a celebration, and they got some really crazy old pictures that they were sharing with me, and I'm trying to think of what town it was. It was in Alberta. It'll come to me after we hang up probably, but I hope you get a bunch of good content for that. Let me know once the signs are up. I'd love to come out and I'll do the walking tour.
Perfect, will do.
I mean,
hopefully this Thursday.
I have seen the story, but
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well,
in Pilot Butte. Sorry. In Pilot Butte, we have a few local residents that have been painting our fire hydrants over the last few years with characters, designs, and all that. So that's something we want to work on featuring, putting out there more, maybe making like a scavenger hunt or some kind of fun activity interaction with.
We worked a bit with Elbow. I could share what I created a strategy for them, but it was kind of scavenger hunt like find the remarkable things, and then they had I don't know if it's rolled out, they're out right now, but finding like the where the boats are and where the the art pieces. And so we had a bit of a model I can share with you guys too on how we came at that, because they were going to have QR codes at every one, so people would get their picture with the, you know, notable thing from the town. So you could do a contest around getting people's pictures with the fire hydrants, or you could have some fun with it.
Gamifying things is so huge, especially gamifying, like scavenger hunt, like especially with small kids, like finding ways to create things in a way that like
it's like a game. It's fun.
I love that.
Oh, I'd love to see some of those pictures too. You should create a story on the fire hydrants you have so far. Yeah. We're here to help. Okay, so I think, barring any more questions or thoughts, I hope this has cleared up what placemaking is, how easy it can be to start, the impact it can have on a community, and given you some good examples of small and large examples where you can give it a try. I think the one thing I learned that I didn't have in any of my notes or hadn't thought of was both from Martin and Kelsey in saying iterate. So starting small and just trying things and not being afraid. I think in a municipal environment, it's scary to think if you get it wrong. There's always someone that's not going to like it. But if everyone kind of likes you, no one's going to love you, is what they say. So I like that message. And Kelsey did put her email in the chat if you have specific questions, and I will also send out her LinkedIn connection as well, so that Martin, I may send yours out too without your permission, if that's okay. But you know, if you want to continue the dialogue, certainly we've got people here to help you, is the point. All right, thank you all so much for being here once again. Fabulous as always. And I hope you have a great day full of great stories.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.